In the vast and dazzling universe of opera, a world populated by fleeting stars and enduring legends, there existed an entirely different category of being. And in that category, there was only Maria Callas. She was a phenomenon. She didn't just possess a voice, she wielded it like a weapon, a force of nature that could command the breathless attention of thousands and bend the will of the most powerful impresarios to her own. Before her presence, seasoned colleagues were known to tremble, and accomplished rivals would simply crumble, their own considerable talents seeming to vanish in her shadow. The entire world watched, utterly transfixed, caught in a state somewhere between reverent awe and genuine terror. So, what was the truth of this woman? Was she a uniquely monstrous personality, a tyrant of the stage? Or was she, perhaps, the only person in the world who truly understood the brutal, soul-crushing sacrifice required to become the greatest of all time? This is the unforgettable story of why Maria Callas was the most feared and ultimately the most revered diva in the entire history of opera. To even begin to comprehend the seismic force that was Maria Callas, you must journey back to her very beginning. Born in New York to Greek immigrant parents, Maria's childhood was the furthest thing from a warm and fuzzy memory. It was a relentless, high-pressure crucible of emotional turmoil and psychological warfare. Her mother, a woman consumed by a ferocious ambition and described as completely overbearing, became utterly convinced that her daughter was a musical prodigy, a gift from the heavens. This conviction led her to push the young Maria with a relentless, unforgiving intensity. Callas herself would later recall with a sense of profound sadness that she felt she was made to sing, describing a life and a destiny that she felt had been chosen for her, not by her. This brutally demanding environment, compounded by the profound hardships of living in wartime Greece, where she spent her incredibly formative teen years, could have easily broken her. But it did not. Instead, this cauldron of pressure and poverty forged her. It built within her a will of pure iron and an ambition so ferocious it was almost terrifying. During those long years of deprivation, she poured every ounce of her being into her craft, studying music with a monomaniacal focus for 10 hours a day. She wasn't merely learning the delicate art of singing, she was learning how to fight, how to survive, how to claw her way out of obscurity. That profoundly difficult upbringing created a relentless, insatiable drive, not simply to achieve success, but to utterly conquer everyone and everything in her path. This was the crucible that gave birth to La Divina, the Divine One, a woman who demanded absolute flawless perfection from herself, and by extension, from every single person who entered her orbit. When Maria Callas finally exploded onto the highly traditional Italian opera scene in the late 1940s, it wasn't just a debut. It was a shockwave that rattled the very foundations of the art form. Her path to the pinnacle of her profession wasn't a journey. It was a military conquest. She arrived in an era where sopranos were most often judged on the pure, angelic, and often impersonal beauty of their tone. Callas, however, brought something entirely different to the stage. Something raw, something visceral, and something absolutely, undeniably electrifying. Dramatic truth. She refused to just sing the notes beautifully. She inhabited them. She became the character. She bled for the music, tearing down the polite, predictable, and passionless conventions that had governed the stage for decades. But this revolutionary, almost primal approach to performance was not exactly welcomed with open arms. Many other singers, who had built successful careers by being comfortable in the old established ways, often bristled at her almost frightening intensity. They deeply resented the new, higher artistic demands she brought with her, a standard against which they now had to be measured. It didn't take long for her to earn a reputation for being difficult, but what most people perceived as difficult was, in reality, an unwavering, almost fanatical commitment to the sanctity of the art itself. The director of the New York Metropolitan Opera famously and revealingly said that Callas was the most difficult artist he had ever worked with. But the reason, he clarified, was not because she behaved like a prima donna, but because she was so much more intelligent. Other artists you could get around, but Callas you could not get around. She knew exactly what she wanted and why she wanted it. That formidable intelligence was her greatest weapon. She demanded grueling, lengthy rehearsals, and she expected everyone, from the celebrated lead tenor down to the most junior member of the chorus, to arrive with the same exhaustive level of preparation that she did. If a conductor's tempo felt emotionally wrong for a scene, she would not hesitate to correct it. If she sensed a fellow singer was being lazy or disrespectful to the music, she would let them know, often in no uncertain terms. This absolute, unshakable refusal to compromise, her profound inability to accept mediocrity in any form, became the very bedrock of her immense power. She wasn't content to be just another soprano in the roster. She was single-handedly setting a new, terrifyingly high standard for the entire world of opera. Her colleagues were faced with a stark and simple choice: elevate their own art to her level, or risk being completely and utterly erased from the stage by her magnetic, all-consuming presence. Step by grueling step, she was building her empire, one perfect, demanding, and unforgettable. At her absolute peak, throughout the 1950s, Maria Callas didn't simply rule the opera world. She held it in a tight, inescapable death grip of sheer terror and breathless awe. Her name became globally synonymous with both divine, unparalleled artistry and explosive, headline-grabbing backstage drama. The press, which quickly became obsessed with her fiery and unpredictable temperament, eagerly nicknamed her the Tigress, and she, in turn, gave them a constant stream of sensational headlines to print. Her reign was marked by a series of legendary clashes and public feuds that forever cemented her fearsome reputation.
Because the Drengerston-born own you and to see yous.
In Umpliet School, Eledict of Everent. Perhaps the most famous and longest-running of these was her feud with the other reigning soprano of the era, Renata Tebaldi. Promoters and the press adored the rivalry, constantly pitting the two titans of opera against each other in a battle for supremacy. It was at its core a battle of styles. Tebaldi, who was widely known as the voice of an angel, versus Callas, the raw, unapologetic dramatic actress. The conflict allegedly ignited in earnest at a joint recital in Brazil, where, after both had supposedly agreed to perform no encores, Tebaldi sang two, a move that reportedly sent Callas into a rage. The war of words that followed in the press became iconic. It was Callas who delivered the legendary immortal quip when asked to compare their voices, stating it was like comparing champagne and Coca-Cola, a devastating, thinly veiled insult. Not to be outdone, Tebaldi shot back with a line aimed directly at Callas's public persona. "I have something Callas will never have, a heart." But her battles were not limited to other singers. Callas, famously and fearlessly, took on the powerful and entrenched management of the world's greatest and most prestigious opera houses. The most notorious and damaging incident of her career is undoubtedly the Rome walkout of 1958. She was scheduled to perform her signature punishing role of Norma for a glamorous gala audience that included the President of Italy himself. Feeling ill the night before, Callas had warned the management, pleading with them to have an understudy ready just in case. They arrogantly refused, making the fateful declaration, "No one can double Callas." She went on and performed the first act, but her voice faltered badly. Rather than deliver what she considered a flawed and insulting performance, she did the unthinkable. She walked out during the intermission. The city of Rome, and indeed the entire opera world, exploded with outrage. The press absolutely crucified her, painting her as a temperamental, hysterical diva, who had deliberately insulted the entire nation of Italy. Newsreels maliciously used old footage of her singing in perfect health to deliberately suggest that she had faked her illness. Callas later explained her decision with pained clarity. "Hisses and yells do not frighten me, but that night in Rome, I was unable to sing." She subsequently sued the opera house, and though the court eventually found them to be at fault 13 years later for their failure to provide a substitute, the catastrophic damage to her public reputation was already done. These events, relentlessly amplified and often distorted by a media machine hungry for drama, built the enduring myth of the fearsome, untouchable diva. To her rivals, she was a professional threat. To opera managers, she was a volatile liability. And to the global public, she was the ultimate drama queen, a figure whose life off the stage was every bit as theatrical as her performances on it. So, was she truly the tyrant she was made out to be, ruling her kingdom through fear and intimidation? The truth, as it so often is far more nuanced and deeply complicated. For Callas, her so-called tantrums and outbursts were almost never about ego. They were expressions of a righteous and passionate fury against the pervasive sin of mediocrity. She once famously stated, "I will always be as difficult as necessary to achieve the best." This wasn't a flippant excuse for bad behavior. It was her unwavering artistic creed. She considered the art of opera to be sacred, a hallowed space, and anything less than total, selfless commitment from those around her was a desecration, a deep and personal insult. The truly brilliant artistic minds who had the opportunity to work closely with her understood this implicitly. Her historic collaboration with the conductor Leonard Bernstein on Medea at La Scala in 1953 became the stuff of legend. It was a powerful meeting of two ferocious, uncompromising musical intellects. And Bernstein, a demanding and fiery genius in his own right, later described her performance as being like a power station in the role. He immediately recognized that her astonishing intensity was not born of saw the profound duality within her, famously observing the two people who resided in one body, Maria, the woman who wanted to love and be loved, and Callas, the lonely diva, a vestal sacrificed on the altar of art. Behind that formidable, iron-clad facade was a deeply, almost painfully vulnerable woman. She was extremely nearsighted and felt a constant, gnawing anxiety on stage without her thick, vision-correcting glasses, leaving her nearly blind. Her dramatic mid-career weight loss, while it undeniably created a more striking and elegant stage presence, may have also been a significant factor in the eventual decline of her vocal powers. And then there is the most heartbreaking kicker of all, the ultimate perfectionist. The woman who possessed what was arguably the world's most recognizable voice privately confessed that she hated the sound of it. The tigress persona was, in the end, a meticulously constructed suit of armor. It was designed to protect a brilliant, sensitive artist who felt the crushing, unbearable weight of her own monumental talent and the relentless, non-stop scrutiny of the entire world. The fear she inspired in others was simply a byproduct of a genius who could not, and would not, compromise on her art, the very thing that gave her turbulent life its meaning. The very same all-consuming fire that powered Maria Callas's legendary, world-changing career also led directly to its tragic and premature end. The constant, draining battles with managers and rivals, the impossibly high standards she set for herself, and the relentless public drama all took an immense and irreversible toll. Her voice, a once-in-a-century instrument that she had pushed to the absolute limits of human expression, began to show undeniable signs of wear. Her life was thrown into even greater turmoil by her tumultuous, passionate, and painfully public affair with the shipping tycoon Aristotle Onassis, who famously and callously left her for Jacqueline Kennedy. The unstoppable elemental force of the opera world began to visibly fade, and her stage appearances became rarer and rarer. In her final, quiet years, the once feared diva became a figure of profound tragedy, a lonely, isolated queen who had lost her voice, her love, and her kingdom. And yet, in the decades since her passing, the fear she once commanded has softened and transformed into something far more powerful and enduring: reverence. Her great friend and collaborator, Franco Zeffirelli, summed up her monumental impact with perfect clarity, stating that the history of opera is now split into two distinct and separate eras, before Callas and after Callas. She was the pivotal driving force in reviving the forgotten bel canto repertoire, completely revolutionizing what both audiences and artists believed was possible on the operatic stage. She taught entire generations of singers who followed her that a merely beautiful voice was simply not enough. What mattered above all else, what was truly essential, was profound emotional and dramatic truth. Leonard Bernstein, who witnessed her genius firsthand during their collaboration on Medea, put it even more succinctly, simply calling her the Bible of opera. Decades after her death, she remains the ultimate, undisputed definition of the diva as a true and total artist. The fear she inspired was never born from simple cruelty, but from a revolutionary's unyielding passion. It was the fear of being confronted by an artist so completely and utterly devoted to her craft that she forced everyone around her to become better, to reach higher, and to feel more deeply. Maria Callas was feared because she was a force of nature, and in her powerful wake, she changed opera forever. What are your thoughts on this legendary figure? Was Maria Callas a misunderstood genius who was held to an impossible standard? Or was she a demanding tyrant who let her temperament get the best of her? Drop your opinion in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into her incredible story, make sure you like this video and subscribe for more stories about the legends who shaped our world. In the end, Maria Callas didn't just change opera, she ruled it. With every electrifying high note and every unflinching stare, she became more than a performer. She became a force, feared, revered, unmatched. Cockily her voice may have faded, but her legend never will. To Opera Brownn, for more true stories behind opera's greatest voices, shocking rivalries, and unforgettable performances. Because in opera, the drama is real, and the stage never forgets.